All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're putting on our medical detective hats to investigate one of the absolute most common biological crimes in healthcare, the urinary tract infection, or UTI. We're going to break down exactly how these infections pull off their heist, how to spot the clues they leave behind, and most importantly, how we can stop them dead in their tracks. And to crack this case, we're using the highly structured DAP-C-CAMP framework. So we'll quickly cover definition and anatomy, pathogens, signs and symptoms, investigations, complications, and finally, management and prevention. Let's get to it. Starting off with Section 1, definition and anatomy, which is basically our crime scene. So a UTI is definitively classified as a microbial invasion anywhere along the urinary tract. Now, establishing the exact anatomical location, that's our very first crucial step here, because the term UTI is really just a giant umbrella term. It literally encompasses everything from the urethra all the way up to the kidneys. And that brings us to the primary geographical divide of our crime scene. We classify these infections based on their site. So you've got the much more common lower UTI, which targets the bladder, we call that cystitis, or the urethra, versus the much more severe upper UTI. This is your acute pyelonephritis striking the kidneys, or, in rarer cases, the ureters. The severity and the whole clinical picture shift drastically, depending on which side of this divide the infection falls on. Moving right along to Section 2, pathogens and pathophysiology, the suspects and their modus operandi. Let's actually track their exact pathophysiological MO. Now, women are particularly susceptible here due to a shorter urethra, but the process is generally the same for everyone. These bacteria, they wage this uphill battle, right? Starting as perineal flora and ascending the urethra. From there, they invade the bladder, causing cystitis. And if they're left unchecked, they just keep going, ascending up the ureters and ultimately breaching the kidneys to cause pyelonephritis. It's a relentless, progressive, ascending invasion. Looking at our lineup of usual suspects, it's pretty clear that different bacteria have really distinct clinical profiles. We aren't just dealing with one generic invader here. For example, you've got Proteus mirabilis, which is notorious for producing urease and causing those nasty struvite stones. Then there's Klebsiella and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. These are your tricky, resistant pathogens that are usually lurking in catheters or hospital settings. Oh, and Staphylococcus saprophyticus? That one frequently targets young, sexually active women. But here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. A massive 75 to 95% of community-acquired UTIs are orchestrated by a single mastermind suspect, Escherichia coli. E. coli is far and away the most common cause you're going to encounter when treating otherwise healthy individuals out in the community. All right, Section 3, signs and symptoms. Let's look at the clues. So if the infection is localized down in the lower tract, your patient is classically going to present with what we call the triad: dysuria, frequency, and urgency. If you see that, it strongly suggests acute cystitis. They might also complain of suprapubic pain or, tell you that their urine looks cloudy or smells offensive. But here's the kicker. Lower UTIs typically present with mild or honestly absolutely no fever. Conversely, if that infection ascends, well, the clues escalate dramatically. You're no longer just looking at localized discomfort. You are looking at blaring systemic warning signs. We're talking high fevers, shaking chills, distinct flank pain, and that classic costovertebral angle or CVA tenderness. All of this points straight to acute pyelonephritis. These patients feel systemically awful, often complaining of nausea, vomiting, and just general malaise. On to Section 4, investigations and assessment. Time to gather the evidence. Right at the bedside, a rapid urine dipstick checking for nitrates and leukocyte esterase is just incredibly helpful. A positive result for either gives you a really strong predictive value for a UTI. But when we actually send that sample to the lab for microscopy, we're hunting for pyuria, white blood cells in the urine. And here is a massive high-yield clue for you. Discovering white blood cell casts under microscopy, that is highly indicative of kidney involvement, specifically pyelonephritis. However, while dipsticks and microscopy give us those rapid, on-the-fly clues, the urine culture and sensitivity remains the undisputed diagnostic gold standard. Culturing the urine to find significant bacteriuria, which is classically more than 10 to the 5th colony-forming units per milliliter, that doesn't just confirm our specific pathogen, it provides the exact, precise sensitivities we need to accurately guide our antibiotic therapy. Section 5, complications and differentials. Let's talk about the fallout. A missed or poorly treated UTI can lead to some truly devastating complications. We are talking about a renal abscess, life-threatening urosepsis, septic shock, or even preterm labor in pregnant patients. And because the stakes are so incredibly high, we always have to carefully rule out the mimics. Things like sexually transmitted infections, pelvic inflammatory disease, passing a renal stone, or even acute appendicitis. These can all present with overlapping symptoms and absolutely must be on your differential radar.
Now, this brings up a really fascinating clinical dilemma. What if a patient has bacteria in their urine, like fully confirmed by a culture, but they have absolutely zero symptoms? Do we actually treat them? Well, for healthy, non-pregnant adults and elderly patients, the answer is generally no. Throwing antibiotics at them doesn't reduce morbidity, and it honestly just increases the risk of resistance and side effects. But there's one massive exception.
You're going to want to write this high-yield pearl down. While we leave healthy adults alone, we always treat asymptomatic bacteriuria in pregnant women. Why? Because the physiological changes of pregnancy make the urinary tract highly susceptible. Leaving it untreated leads to a staggering 75% of pregnancy-associated pyelonephritis cases. It's wild. And that is exactly why all pregnant women are routinely screened with a urine culture at their very first prenatal visit.
Finally, Section 6, Management and Prevention. Let's close this case once and for all.
Our management tools really need to scale with the severity of the crime. For your straightforward, uncomplicated lower UTIs, oral weapons like trimethoprim, sulfamethasone, or nitrofurantoin are highly effective. But severe, complicated cases like pyelonephritis with signs of systemic sepsis, those demand immediate hospitalization. These patients are going to require IV broad-spectrum antibiotics and fluid resuscitation to treat that potential septic shock.
Ultimately, though, the absolute best treatment is preventing the invasion from happening in the first place. We can advise patients on some simple, actionable tactics: maintaining adequate hydration to flush the system out, ensuring complete bladder emptying, practicing proper front-to-back perineal wiping to stop that E. coli transfer. And of course, in clinical settings, absolutely avoiding any unnecessary or prolonged catheterization. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to really think about this question. By methodically moving from the anatomy of the crime scene to the specific bacterial suspects, identifying their clinical clues, confirming with gold standard evidence, and understanding the severe fallout of complicated cases, ask yourself, how might applying this structured, detective-like approach save your next patient from life-threatening sepsis? Keep the DEPSI Camp framework in your back pocket, and you'll always be ready to crack the case.